I'm really happy to be here with you today and planning on pulling 3 cards from this Muse Tarot deck to get messages for you from Spirit at the time you find this video. And I will say that in the pre-shuffle, the card that flew out very notably was the moon. So I don't know if it's going to show up here again, but I did feel like there was some sort of message there, kind of like helping me understand the underlying essence of this reading. And so the moon to me can represent like the mysterious unfolding of life to a certain extent. Maybe better put, it's like, I mean, I think in toxicity, it can mean things are being veiled, right? Either deceitfully, maybe by somebody else, or maybe like the shadowy aspects of ourself are veiling things from our consciousness and keeping us stuck. But in the beautiful sense, which is definitely, much more the sense I got from it when it flew out in the pre-shuffle, in the beautiful sense, it's like going into the unknown. It's like the beautiful mystery of life and how we all like navigate that unfolding. And so there is definitely like this unfolding essence I'm getting about this reading. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you are coming to this reading, like creating your own path, charging your own way, and charging isn't even the right word because it's more like allowing it to unfold before you, something along those lines. That would make a lot of sense. So I think that's what the messages from Spirit are about, are essentially like if you are charting, I think instead of charging, I meant to say charting. That's what wanted to come through, like charting your own course. These are going to be messages for you about that in terms of like almost advice from Spirit. Okay, here we go. So that felt a little messy. Does that make sense though? So just to reiterate, I feel like the essence of this reading, or who this reading is for, is somebody who is wanting to, okay, just one sec. I'm just like, did the Chariot come out in reverse or am I just weird? It's like, that felt like magic, like it flipped upright. Maybe I did it unconsciously. Well, regardless, we're going to keep it like this because it feels right, but that's bizarre. I swear to God it was in reverse. That's interesting, though. I love that because I think there's something here about, like when I saw it in reverse, I was like, okay, so there's some sort of advice from Spirit here about just like not forcing success. But then whether it was in reverse or not, and whether I flipped it or not, it's going to be interesting to watch the recording back. There's something here about a beautiful omen, shall we say, validation that this path that you're on will lead to success. So if this reading is for you, you are somebody who is willing to tap into your own sense of self and find a path that's in alignment with that sense of self versus following everybody else's path. Right? So again, I'm getting that sense from the moon card that came out in the pre-shuffle. And so we're going to get here some advice, some messages from Spirit about how to navigate that. Because I think what I've been trying to say this whole time, and please forgive me, it's come out in kind of like a word vomit. But what I've been trying to say is somebody who is embodying the beautiful essence of the moon card is somebody that's very different from most people in our Western culture, right? And so most people in our Western culture are not are not like going to the edges of life and sinking into that mystery and that unknown and letting things unfold and be revealed. Most people are not sinking deeply into themselves and then understanding who innately they are and the gifts they are innately intended to bring to the world, and then figuring out one step at a time how to do that, right? So the act alone, or excuse me, the willingness alone to be one who does that is very noteworthy. And I think it's also worth saying that that willingness alone then requires a lot of support and validation from others like you and from your higher self and spirit, because it can be very, very scary in our current culture to embody the moon card, that beautiful willingness to go with the flow of life. So not being like aimless, right? But being like understanding what you're aligning to, understanding what your visions and values are, but not forcing, right? And I think that's so again, I don't know what was happening with this Chariot card, whether it was in reverse and I unconsciously flipped it, or whether I saw it in reverse and it never was in reverse. But when I saw it come out in my mind, I saw it in reverse, and right away the message was just like, don't force things. Don't force the success, because that's what the convention is doing, right? Conventional culture is forcing success. And then what we're realizing as a collective is that from that force comes things like exploitation. From that force comes things like a lack of sustainability, right? So in the short term, forcing success is more comfortable. In the long term, it never works, right? But in the short term, not forcing success, so essentially like embodying the moon card, not forcing the Chariot, because upright, the Chariot to me is like this beautiful in control success card, right? And that's when it's positively aspected. But when it's more toxic, it's going to be like that gripping, that forcing, that making things happen. And so in I think I lost my train of thought there, but essentially it's just like really noticing the difference between what conventional culture does. What I was going to say is in the short term, not forcing it, right, is uncomfortable. But in the long term, over time, it's so much more comfortable, because what you're doing is tapping into what is sustainable. What you're doing is tapping into what is not going to hurt others and hurt yourself in the long run, right? And so there's such wisdom to the moon card, but I think it's important for us all to acknowledge, especially early on, and or if there's like a plateau in your journey, which is very, very natural part of this journey. I think it's really important to acknowledge that there is just innate discomfort in doing things differently than the culture that we live in. So with all that said, let's get to the story these cards are telling. I think it's incredibly, incredibly beautiful. I think I actually want to start with the bottom of the deck, because it's an interesting message. And the bottom of the deck to me is kind of typically signifies like I always say like the why behind the what. So the cards that come out are typically like the what, more of like directives from source. And then to me, the knight, or excuse me, the bottom of the deck is more like the why. It's kind of like the underlying essence is how I read it. And I think the Knight of Emotions, the Knight of Cups in reverse is a really beautiful, it's a really beautiful card to have, but it's like an interesting message. So hear me out. So the Knight of Emotions, the Knight of Cups, when it's upright, for me personally, I don't often read it positively. Of course, I believe every card can be negatively and positively aspected, and I just get like gut feelings and slash a story kind of unfolds. That's how I, decide whether it's positive or negative. But at the same time, I think every reader has like certain cards that are typically positive or typically negative. For me, for various reasons, the Knight of Cups tends to be more of a negative card in my mind, because I typically see it as like a charming person without substance or something like that. And the word that's coming to me in this particular reading is, for whatever reason, is chummy. Okay, so when it's in reverse, and this is not to call you out as that, what I'm sensing is that you're detoxing the like conditioning, the cultural conditioning, the family conditioning, the religious conditioning, the like subcultural conditioning that of like toxic charm. So like somebody seems nice but doesn't know how to be kind. Somebody, looks good superficially, you know, but isn't like, doesn't have substance. Does that make sense? And I think that is very, very beautiful, because I think we all have to go through periods and seasons of this to get to that more root level authenticity, not only within ourselves, but also within our relationships. And I just want to peek here. Oh my gosh, that's wild. So here under the, that is, oh, I just got goosebumps. Wow. Okay, so under the Knight of Cups in reverse is the Muse of Emotion. So in this deck, isn't that cute? So that, or in a standard deck, that would be the King of Cups. Wow. Oh my gosh, that's so wild, because the King of Cups is one of the most like emotionally intelligent cards in the deck. You know, my typical reading of it, interpretation of it, is just like straight up emotional intelligence. So it's wild that like we have the Knight of Emotions in reverse, and under that it's almost like as you detox that the charm without substance, then you get the real deal, which is true emotional intelligence, which leads to sustainable emotional satisfaction. Wow, that blows my mind. So that's such a beautiful kind of like why behind the what, right? Because I think a lot of times, you know, on our path, when we're in pursuit, or typically we are in pursuit of something, right? I don't know where to put this Knight card. We'll put it right here for now. And so it's more of like a action-oriented journey, right? And it's more of like your path probably feels like, you know, it's like maybe your career path or something along those lines. But I think what I'm coming to realize is accurate is like kind of underneath all of those like very tangible goals and tangible things that are like on our bucket list, so to speak, whether it's career or otherwise, it is that desire for emotional satisfaction, right? But I just love how it's coming out here, where it's like the message is like emotional satisfaction isn't necessarily like from the satisfaction of reaching our goals, but instead it's from that emotional intelligence, and with that emotional intelligence, then we are more likely to reach our goals. Do you like feel the distinction in that? It's like we often think, well, we can't be sustainably happy until we meet, you know, we reach this goal, or we check that off our list, or we get to this milestone. But the message of this reading is maybe to reverse that, to focus really on detoxing the things that are out of alignment, that are not authentic, do not have substance, that do not have substance for you, the charm without substance energy. And then as you do that, you will more go into those deep wells of emotional intelligence. Through that, you are going to have better self-guidance, which is going to make your path more successful. It's going to make it easier for you to see what your path is. And then as you're following that path, as you're putting things into practice, as you are materializing things, it is more emotionally satisfying. But if you're seeking the path to find that emotional satisfaction, versus seeking emotional satisfaction through emotional intelligence first and then acting from that place, it's going to be a completely different energy. Does that make sense? Wow, I'm just like loving this reading. So finally, let's get to these 3 cards. First and foremost, look at how we have 7 of materials and the Chariot, which is a 7 in the major arcana. So a lot of times to me, 7s can represent like reevaluating, planning, strategizing. Now we've got a minor arcana 7 and a major arcana 7. So I find that really interesting, because to me the distinction I kind of make between minor and major arcana are like when minor arcana come up, to me that means our minor choices have a more major impact. And when major arcana up, typically to me that means there's like a more major plan at play. So our choices have a more minor impact. So it's kind of like there's an initiation or initiating that's required when minor arcana come up, and more of a surrendering energy that's required when major arcana come up. Now you have both minor and major arcana, both in the number 7. So I think there's this like nuanced dance that is required of you right now, as your intuitive path, as your innate path is unfolding between initiation and surrender in regards to this idea of like strategy. Okay. Now look at, isn't it interesting? Like, look at, that's wild actually, because we're talking about, I didn't notice this. Look at the 7 of Pentacles here, 7 of Materials. She's like she's on a literal path. Look at that. And that's what we've been talking about here. And then look at how, okay, so she's looking down at the ground, really grounded, walking her path, right? Strategizing, figuring out her path. And do you see how the Chariot, it's almost like the same, it's like her path is now coming out of her. This is just wild. So it's like both is required, this like very grounded energy with also like the more spiritual determination to get where you're going. So 7 of Pentacles to me, typically, it's really about looking at your investments clearly and strategizing with investments. And I don't mean like simply investing in the stock market. I mean like how you are investing your time, money, and energy in all regards. So there's like a really getting honest with yourself about whether investments are paying off or not. And if they are not paying off, seeing if there's like a surrender that needs to happen in terms of like maybe there's just some impatience you need to work through, or if it's like time to make a change. Do you know what I mean? Because what's coming to me with this card is the sunk cost fallacy. So are you familiar with that? It's like simply but powerfully the phenomenon that we as humans, once we've invested in anything, we would like it to pay off. And so we often will continue to sink time, money, and energy into something, even when it's not paying off, because we're trying to, what's the word? Justify. We're trying to justify our initial investments. Okay. But typically, once we're at that point of justification, it is actually usually, or I'll speak from my own experience, once we're at that point of justification, it is usually an indication that it's time to divest time, money, and energy and invest it in other places. So I think there's, I don't necessarily think this means you have to like quit a creative project or business altogether. I feel like it could be a lot more gentle than that, of just like looking at how you can do things differently. So getting really nuanced and really honest with yourself of where you're investing your time, money, and energy, and really, but then also being expansive about it, being like, I am an infinite spiritual being, and there are infinite ways for me to invest my time, money, and energy. What could be 1 or 2 small changes I could make that would be more in alignment with the abundant, beautiful, innately mine path that I am walking. So instead of seeing it as like it's easier said than done, but I do think instead of seeing it as like a punishment or like even a inconvenience, I think there's also, you can see it as an inconvenience, because I think whenever we have to re-strategize, it feels a bit inconvenient. But I also think there's like a lot of beauty here. Look at this card. It is so beautiful. We've got like a floral up here. We've got flowers plant. It's just like a gorgeous imagery of the 7 of Pentacles, right? And we have to be willing to do things a bit differently. There's like a willingness to change here. And it goes right along with the 3 of Inspirations, the 3 of Wands, because to me, the 3 of Wands typically represents a surveying of options sort of vibe. Okay. So I typically read the 7 of Wands as a very positive card. And then, by the way, you have just like a lot of positivity in this reading. Because the reason I view the 3 of Wands typically as positive is I think whenever we can be in a position where we're like calmly surveying our options versus being in survival mode, I think there is a lot of power there. And so when you like combine the Seven of Pentacles with the Three of Wands, I think there's like this, again, there's like this willingness to, in a very grounded sense, strategize and re-strategize in big potentially, but also for sure in small things. And seeing that as like a really beautiful opportunity for you as a creative being to put your creations more into alignment with what you're really wanting, and to be really honest with yourself of where your time, money, and energy is being invested in a way where it's not getting a return where you expected. And instead of just assuming you have to invest more, I do think sometimes that's the case, right? Sometimes it's like we need to invest more time, money, and energy. And instead of just always assuming that, making sure you're also surveying your options, calmly surveying your options, calmly noticing where you could be doing things differently in order to get more of what you want. And then, I mean, the Chariot is just so beautiful. We already talked about what it could have, its potential meaning was if it was in fact in reverse. And let's talk about it here upright. I think it's beautiful validation that there is more success for you to experience on this path. But I also think it's like what we talked about. There's a grounded approach that's really necessary that's coming out here in this grounded black and white path in the Seven of Pentacles that's required to ground your dreams into reality, to ground your path into your everyday experience. And there's also a energetic approach. There's a guiding your life through the energy of things that is also required for this path to more and more reveal itself to you. And again, I think there's this like nuance of this dance with life where you are sometimes initiating and directing, grounding, and you are sometimes surrendering and receiving from that which whatever you call it, that which is your higher self, that which is God, that which is Mother God, that which is spirit, source, universe. So there's like this really beautiful nuanced dance that I am picking up that I think you are already doing, but I think if like this almost feels like a recipe, right? And these are the ingredients. And I think the more you trust that these are in the ingredients, the more you practice working with the ingredients, the easier it becomes to let your path reveal itself. And so there's the ingredients of like strategy and a willingness always to reevaluate in a very grounded sense and in a more intangible spiritual sense. And as you're doing that, at the center of your reading here is this just always allowing yourself, I shouldn't say always, I don't usually like using that word because it's like, how do you always? But throughout your entire existence, allowing yourself the gift and the necessity of surveying your options instead of just sinking more into things. Because that's going to be like the levity I feel like you need whenever you feel like you're going down the rabbit hole, and not in a good way, of the moon card, right? Whenever you feel like the moon is more toxic and veiled and you feel frustrated with the mystery of life instead of inspired by it and invigorated by it, I think that levity that you need is this Three of Wands essence, where you're just kind of lifting a little, taking a breath, and you're surveying your options. And you're saying, okay, I'm in charge of how I invest my time, money, and energy. And I understand that through daily practices, through one baby step at a time, and through powerful visionary energy in the intangible sense, I am making my way more towards that which I say I value and that which I envision for my life. And I have this gentleness to the process so that that which knows more than me can gently guide me back to what my innate path is, as I am grounding my path. Do you know what I mean? Like this thing called life is such a crazy thing, because it's like we are both required to ground our path and required to listen to wisdom that is beyond what we know, right? And there it is a nuanced dance, because I think a lot of times it can seem like, especially in our culture, well, if we just keep going, if we put our head down and go, she's got her head down here. And sometimes that's required, right? But if we only have our head down, sometimes we can build a path to things either unconsciously that we don't actually want, or we can like build a path because we set out, our past self was like, I think I want that, right? But then we don't check in to kind of reestablish and reroute. And then our path is not actually, our path, and it's not to what we actually want. And so I love how her head is down, her path is grounded, and here her head is up, her heart is open, and there's a clear way forward. And so I think there's this like beautiful, I feel a lot of maturity to whatever collective I'm reading for. So if this reading is for you, you're clearly somebody who is getting into the nuances of life, the nuances of manifestation, of manifesting what you truly desire, the nuances of living well, the nuances of emotional maturity. And you're more and more like working with that consciously. And I think that is, I feel like an entirely new level opening up for you because of the work you've done in the past, and because of like this sort of energy that you, I believe, have been practicing for a bit. And this feels almost just like a permission slip to be like, or like what wants to be said is like, you've been doing it right. Now we're just bringing some like clear archetypes and visuals and words to what you've been doing. And the more you can practice the richness, the nuances of what you've been doing, the more you're going to be able to see your path, walk your path, live your path, and get to where your path wants to lead you to. So it's just like incredibly beautiful. I think I'm going to leave it at that. But I do want to say thank you so much for tuning in. It's just such a joy to read for the collective that is intended for my messages. You just are clearly such cool, kind people doing really incredible work, I think, within you. But I also am getting the sense that the collective that I'm intended to read for, like, your inner work is now also beginning to, like, at the time you find my readings, if they're right for you, there's like your inner work is beginning to pay off. The healing work you've been doing, the personal development, whatever it seems like you've been doing where like it felt like it was too long or too much or was never going to pay off, I feel like you're at a precipice where that is about to change. So keep doing what you're doing and be willing to survey your options, be willing to gently reevaluate, gently re-strategize. And I have no doubt that, like I said, you will more and more see your path as it wants to be revealed to you, walk your path, and get to where your path wants to lead you to.